record. Yes. Okay, we come back again with Coach Simon. Okay, Coach, how's life? How's life during
Good, mate. It's good, pal. I'm having a deja vu. I'm feeling like we've been here before. No, life's good, pal.
Where are you? In Jakarta? Still in Jakarta, yeah?
Life's, I'm still in Jakarta, yeah. Still in Jakarta. We made the decision not to go home just because
Yeah.
if we went home, we'd be living in our friends, something like that, and little man would be struggling. So this is our home, and this is where we've lived for the last 3 years. So we decided just to stay here. We have a nice house, and so far, with weather like this, things are a lot harder for others. I'm in a lucky position.
Okay, Coach. You start coaching in Philippines, the country that Indonesia used to beat with high scores. In the past, even we beat them 13 against 1. But since you took them in 2010, you took them to the semi-final. Since then, they don't stop growing, the Azkals. What was the secret of Philippine football? Why they grow so fast?
Well, back in 2010, I think I didn't have a particularly technical group of players. There were other countries are much more superior in their football ability, but we managed to build a team and a squad of players that were just fed up of losing and just decided, right, we're not going to lose anymore. And we're just prepared to go and fight for everything they had. And I had a lot of time with them on the training pitch, so we had good opportunity to practice. And being totally honest and putting cards on the table, we rode our luck. We were quite lucky in some situations. But when you've got a guy like Neil Etheridge in goal, who now plays in the Premier League or has played in the Premier League, that's a massive advantage when it comes to stopping people scoring goals. So there wasn't much of a secret back then. It was purely hard work and desire. We wanted it. We wanted to win. We wanted not to lose. From then on, the difference between the Philippines and a lot of other countries is this possibility of dual citizenship. When, for example, when Octavio Dutra changes his passport, he has to give up being Brazilian and become Indonesian. For Filipinos, they are Filipino, but they can also be British, and they can it just depends on what passport they show.
Double nationality.
So it makes it, so it's a big advantage because players in Europe are thinking, well, okay, I don't lose anything by getting a Filipino passport. It means I can play international football, but I can still be German.
Yes.
So it does help. So they have a much wider pool of players to pull from. It's much easier for them to get, foreign-based players to come in and play for their national team, as opposed to. The drawback is that the grassroots isn't very good, and that current group of players takes a lot of money to fly them in and out all the time. But without, underneath that, the 23s are not particularly strong. The 19s still get beat by everybody, and below that, the generations are coming, but it's still where they'd be considered a really a football country.
Yeah, Coach. And back in Philippines again, Neil Etheridge, 2010 was literally nobody. But 2018, 2019, and he became literally the only Asean player in Premier League who actually play in Cardiff City. How was he when he was your player in the Philippines? What Indonesia can copy from him, the attitude or hard work? I don't know.
His mentality was unbelievable. He was a sort of goalkeeper that would really, really get angry if he let a goal in. He'd start swearing and getting angry at himself that he'd let something go past him, and his desire just to keep a clean sheet. In the semi-final, one of the group games against Vietnam, he was saving everything that came near him. It's like he had Velcro down his arms. It was just everything was just being touched wide. But he was very young then, and he was being coached very well. He was third choice goalkeeper at Fulham when I had him. So he was always going to do well at home because he's a big boy as well. But the mentality of just, sheer determined hard work every day, and that anger that maybe something got by him, he wasn't going to let it happen again. So if someone scored once, in the semi-finals against Indonesia, he made a lot of really, really good, important saves. So he just had that mentality that he just wasn't going to get beat. It didn't matter what it cost. If he got hurt, he got hurt, but he was not going to get beat.
Okay, Coach. And then after Philippines, you went to Vietnam, So you know a little bit about Vietnam football. And you said once in an interview, comparing to Indonesia, Vietnam League, it's not that good. But why the national team is very, very good. Even the young one under 23, under 19, under, I don't know. Yeah. They're very good. They even go to semi-final in IFC or Asean Games or something.
Well, I took a lot of criticism for this because people don't like hearing things like this. But, you know, sometimes you need to take your supporter glasses off and just step back and look at it from a realistic point of view. The thing that Vietnam are doing very well together is that everybody is sitting around a table and working together to push football forward. The league's on board. The league don't use these young players. They don't sign them. They don't try and bring them in. They just leave them to the national team. And the national team creates schedules for these young players around the world. So they go and play in tournaments and training camps, and they keep them busy all the way through the year so they can't get involved in league football. So it means that those young players, by the time that they get to 23, 24, 20, they've all played together for the last 4 or 5 years in the same group with the same coaches. And that kind of development pathway has been, so now you've got 4 or 5, 6 really good young players playing in that senior national team. Vietnam are going places, and it's because you have an organized, structured pathway for them to get better, where everybody buys in and no one's trying to go, well, no. They're going to come and play for me first, then they can come to national team. They don't have any disputes with the league. So when everyone works together, this is the sort of thing that can happen. And this is why, unfortunately, right now for Indonesia, Vietnam are a couple of steps ahead.
Yeah, Vietnam, when we play against Vietnam, even before 2 years ago, when the young Indonesia team play against Vietnam, the team playing very good, very solid. It looks like they play together since 10 years ago. I don't know. Yeah. It's very good. And then we're talking about Thailand, coach. They have 5 players playing J League, and 3 of them are actually starting 11 in the club. You know, Chanatip, Teraton, Titipan. In Indonesia, we have Yanto Basna. Only Yanto Basna, who is brave enough to play in Thailand, and also starting 11 in Thailand. What do you think the impact if Indonesia players start to play abroad, like in Thailand or I don't know, hopefully one day in Japan?
Well, I think there is a cultural issue to Indonesian football, and that because players are well paid, because the league is well structured, effectively games are exciting. There's a lot of people there. You're seen as a hero. There is no real urge for players to go outside of their comfort zone and play in other countries and to push themselves. Everything's, you know, on a plate for them back home. You've got, when you play in front of so many people, you know, and this is why when Indonesian teams travel, they're not very good away from home because they're outside of that comfort bubble. They're, well, you know, 30, 40,000 away fans. All teams that play at home are expected to win their games, no matter whether they're top or bottom of the league. That's just Indonesian football. I think if players were pushed to go outside, and the better young players, like the Garuda Select project, I mean, that's some way off affecting the senior national team because, you know, it's still under 16 at the minute. But if more players were pushed abroad and were gaining experience in these other leagues and then came back together to work for the senior team, you know, they could go up against teams from the Middle East. They could go up against teams that are really strong, big, physical attacking because they've played against them in different leagues around the world. So, you know, Yanto's one of the only ones out there doing it. Guys like Evan have had the experience, and I think they're all the better for it. They become more experienced. They understand different situations better, and are easier to adapt to different coaches as well. Things like that. You know, different nationalities of coaches. I was in Thailand, I had to work with a Dutch coach. It was quite difficult for me, but I understood a little bit of what he was, and I understood his humor, and all these things, they have an impact.
Yeah, and Beto yesterday said in the journalist, he said in Indonesia player, when they have money to buy car, house, and then provide for the family, it's enough for them. They don't want to, they don't have the mentality like Brazilian, like Beto said. They want to push to play, to earn more money.
It's a difficult thing, Bess, because a while ago I was working for Nike, and while I was in the Philippines, we came across and we set up just a little academy in Jakarta. And this is why when Indonesia was banned from international competition, and we set this academy up, and we had some of the best 16, 17-year-old players around at the time training in this academy, you know, 4 or 5 times a week, based up at Sawangan. And we had a psychologist come in and just do some work, you know, about motivation off the pitch with them. And we set up a little test where they had a stack of magazines in front, and they had to cut pictures out of magazines and stick them down on a board so that it gave an indication of what they wanted football to give them. Was it money? Was it power? Was it fame? Was it girls? Was it houses? Was it speedboats, Lamborghinis? Whatever it was like a dream board of what football was going to give you. And what was very interesting was that out of all of those players, even at the age of 16 years old, the number one thing that all of those players wanted out of football was to be able to look after their family. And that was number one across the board. There was no one saying, well, I want to be the best player in the world. I want to win a Ballon d'Or. I want to play in the Premier League. I want to be a millionaire. Number one was look after family. Now that's a cultural trait. That's not an individual being difficult or even being negative. It's just simply saying that when you come into a country, you have to understand the culture. And that is such a big part of Indonesian culture, is family life and looking after each other and staying together. So when that applies to football, when they sign their first contract at 18, 19 years old and they get a good salary because of it, they've looked after their family and maybe some of their other, further apart family, their next generation of family, they've already looked after them. So then the motivation to say, listen, you can be better. Yeah, but why? I've already achieved my number one target. Why would I then push harder? So there's a bit of a cultural trait there, which is not a negative. It's just something that coaches have to think about and work with in terms of their understanding of what an Indonesian player is. It does make it quite tricky when it comes to motivation.
Yeah, and also, coach, back in 2017, you were surprisingly champion with Bayangkara. Some people even said it was luck. But when I talked with Spaso, with Dutra, with Evan, with Paulo Sergio, they told me it was so professional, the club. Everything, it was very good. The preparation, the food is very professional. What was actually the secret to win the championship in Indonesian League? Because Bayangkara is a new team. Huh?
It was a new team, but I think, when I first came in, they told me that we were, to give you a bit of background about it, when we first came in, they were heavily dependent on a striker called Thiago. And he scored, I think, 25 goals season 2016. And the boss said to me that whenever we play, if Thiago doesn't play, we lose. And if Thiago does play, we win. So we need to build the team around Thiago not being there. So what I noticed straight away when I came in is that we had a lot of really good young ball players. And I mean, guys who can pass the ball and keep the ball. Evan, Zulfiandi, Subo, who was quite underrated at the time. All these players, really good young players who could pass the ball. Hagi was with us at the time as well. And they played together a long time. So we really needed to just play on that. We needed to build a team really around that ability. That was one of the things we were really good at. So we kind of set about just forming a way of playing that really highlighted what they were really good at doing. And that we ended up playing 4-4-2 diamond.
Yes.
And had them really close in the middle and were able to pass to each other and kept moving that ball. But, the final piece in the puzzle was Paulo coming in, and he's proved to be, one of the best players to play in Indonesia for quite some time, and that he's won 2 of the last 3 championships with 2 different clubs.
Hard worker player.
He's an absolute role model, and I can't speak highly of him enough. Because he had an impact on the players around him. Yeah. Evan loved playing with him. Hagi loved playing with him. Everybody loved playing with Paulo because of what he gave them. One of my favorite be on you to get better.
Yeah, because when Paulo lose the ball, he'll always be the first one who press. Yeah. So example for Indonesian player, foreign player who press, rare, very rare.
But not only that, Bez, it was the way he handled himself off the pitch. He was a very approachable guy. He was very friendly. He didn't think of himself as special, even though arguably he could have been. He was just one of the boys, and he was always very keen to get the local guys involved. And I think the key to that team of Bayangkara was that on the pitch we played to our strengths, but off the pitch we were one unit. We did everything together. We tried very hard to keep everything as a family, and we had so much against us with away fans filling stadiums against us and going to away games, and we just said, listen, everything's going to be against us this year. It's going to be about us, so we've got to stay compact and tight as a family. And right through till the last game against Madura, where we had to win, and despite all the stuff that was going on with Mitra Kuka and the controversy, we just had to do our jobs. We just had to keep our heads down and work hard. And I think that showed in that we still are, Bayangkara over the last 3 seasons, the team that wins the most games away from home. Yeah. And that started back in 2017, where we just, listen, home or away, we're going for it. We're going to go and try and win this game.
I do personally believe that you deserve the champion because you won 1-0, 2-1, it's at least you win away. You win a lot of game away.
The nearest team to us was Bali, and we beat them home and away and scored 3 goals every time we played them. No other team did that. So listen, the controversy, I don't know. I don't go into those meetings. I have no idea what happened behind closed doors. I just don't know. I'm there to do a job, and so are the players. And we did our job the best we possibly could. And if anything else happens, something else happens. That's not down to us. That's Indonesian football. But it was just a togetherness and a working for each other. You know, again, we were one of the teams that scored the most goals in the last 10 minutes of the games throughout that season, because we just wouldn't lose. We just kept going until we were going to win, and we keep going and keep going and keep going. And it might have been a lucky sub every now and again, but we just kept going, and I think we earned it. We earned it right up until the last day.
Of course, it was very, very good experience in that. And then you become Indonesia national team coach, one of the most difficult job in Indonesia. What was the reason, coach? Why you took the job?
One of the most difficult jobs in Asia. I think anyone who knows about football outside, it's one of the most difficult jobs in Asia, because everybody knows that Indonesia is massive and there's so much talent, but there are so many issues that come along with it. It's not one of the biggest jobs in Indonesia. It's one of the biggest jobs in Asia, without a shadow of a doubt.
And then what was the reason? What was the main reason why you took the job actually back in 2019? People want to know it.
It was a massive challenge. And I think that you really have to try and understand Indonesia and Indonesian culture before you can really be successful. And I was sacked twice by Mitra Kukar and Pelita Bandung Raya before I came back successfully and won the league. So it took me failing twice in order to be successful. But I think once you kind of understand what's around you, what you can control and what you can't, you know, I think bringing in another foreign coach sometimes is not really the answer, because he doesn't understand all the problems, and all of those issues will at some point become a problem during that coach's job. So, you know, I come off the back of 2 good seasons with Bayangkara. I had the support of a lot of players. A lot of players were pushing me, saying, "Coach, come on, you don't do this." We'll you know, they were very supportive of me going for it, and it was a massive challenge. You know, you can't work in a country like Indonesia and not feel the passion from the fans, not feel them behind you, whether against or for you. It doesn't really matter. You feel that passion. You want to be a part of it. And in all honesty, I wanted to make a difference. I really wanted to make Indonesia better. I had some ideas that I thought could really help. Some things that might be different from the last coach or different from previous coaches. But, you know, these things happen. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You go in there with the best intentions to try and improve things, and you know, sometimes it doesn't quite work out.
And Simon Mcmenemy, as a coach, what kind of style of play do you want to give to your player? You know, it's a British style or Simon style? Because Marinos, yesterday I talked with Marinos. He said, Coach Simon Mcmenemy is one of my best ever coaches. He said, top two. He said, Marinos.
I can't argue with that. Marinus is a good lad. We had a good, you know, he can be a difficult player, Marinus, to deal with, and we had our problems, but he scored 2 goals away against Bali. You know, he looked like a different player. He started getting into the national team again. He's a great lad, Marinus. You just have to get inside his head. You just have to, you put his arm around him and tell him he's the best, and he'll go out and do it for you. Me as a coach, I think there are a million coaches in the world who are better than me in terms of tactical, you know, seeing things on the pitch. But I like to believe, and based on my experience, I think I'm very good at building teams. I'm very good at bringing players together. I'm very good at trying to get the best out of players. And that doesn't necessarily mean, you know, the 90 minutes that you get judged on. A lot of what frustrates me about being a football coach is that people don't actually see me work. They see the product of my work. They see 11 players putting into footballing terms what we've been doing during the week, but I'm not working. I'm sat watching them just like supporters are. But people don't actually see me work on a training pitch. They don't see the things we change. They don't see the things we put in place. They don't see the work we did with the national team leading up to the World Cup qualifiers to try and make things more professional. And the biggest praise you can get as a coach is from previous players who have worked with you when they turn around like Marinus and say, he's a great coach to work with. Yanto Basner keeps asking me, he keeps messaging me now, Coach, where are you going? Because I'd like to come work with you again. Please come with me. Please, can I come with you? Paolo does the same. Spasso wants, if you get good press coming back from him, if you get good if players that you used to work with still regard you very highly after you've worked with them. And there are some players I've had to say some bad things to, you know, I've had to get on their case, or I've had to drop them, or I've had to, whatever it is. If you can still come through that with their respect, and that they'll come and work for you again if given the opportunity, that's a bigger praise than anyone can ever give you from outside of the game, or any supporter or any boss, because they're the ones that are with you every day. They see you work. They're the ones that are with you through everything that you actually do and try to put in place. And if someone like Beto turns around and says, listen, very professional coach, really enjoyed working with him, I'd love to work with him again, that's all the praise that you really need, because that's the real credible praise that comes back.
And when you become the coach of Indonesia, what was the biggest challenge during that time?
Oh, best we could be here all day talking about that. This could go on for hours if we start going through everything. I think the biggest challenge was that there was no identity to the way we played. There was no, there was a lot of problems off the pitch, a lot of problems. You know, we had teams not releasing players. We had I remember being head coach of Bayangkara, and in the run up to the Asian Games, I lost players for 2 months, 3 months, would just disappear. I didn't know whether they were coming. I didn't know when they'd come back. I didn't know if they were injured. All of a sudden, my players disappear from training grounds and I didn't hear anything, nothing. No letters, no text messages, no nothing. And I'm having to call the player myself to say, whereabouts are you? Oh, I'm at training camp. I'm sorry, coach, you should have been told. It's okay, it's not your fault, just so I know where you are, that's all.
That's one I still remember.
The first things we tried to do.
Yeah, this is the one thing you try to change when you come to national team, to make a report.
The first thing we did, we changed a lot of things that people don't see, that people didn't see. The first thing I needed to do was get all the coaches. And me being one of the coaches in the league before, I asked to have a meeting with all of the league coaches, and we got everybody into a room and just said, listen, guys, we're all in the same boat here. You want to win games for Madura, Pasija, Persib. You guys have got your jobs, but I've got my job as well. Now we can fight, and ultimately the PSSI will probably win, or we can work together to really try and make each other's jobs easier. Sometimes I'll win, sometimes you'll win. If we can have that understanding and have open communication, things are going to get much better. And guys like Teko was brilliant. Milo was great. Jackson Thiago was on board. And to this day, and Robert Alberts, we have a really good relationship, because we were just honest and just said, listen, we've all got jobs to do. We're all in the same boat here. We all know the job and how difficult it is. So let's try and help each other as opposed to fighting against each other. And we tried to do that from day one. And you know, I agreed with the coaches that whenever I took a player, I would give them a minimum of 2 weeks notice. We would do a medical check-in for players, so that if there were any injuries coming in, we would find those injuries, we would know about them. And then if anyone got injured during our national team, we would have a report on that. And at the end of the training camp, we'd send the medical report back to all the coaches. With someone like Jackson actually wanted to know what we were doing in the training sessions. So we would send all of the data that we got from the Catapult GPS, we would send it all to him, so that he could look through it and look for his players and see what they were doing every day. That was the detail he wanted, and I was happy to do that for him. But those are the sort of things that we started to put in place, the processes behind the national team to make sure things were running a lot better than they were. At the time, it was just a team that was called together every couple of weeks, would play, win or lose, and then go back to clubs. And everyone was just, well, this player's injured. What's he been doing? How's it? You know, there was so many unanswered questions. And I just tried very hard from day one to make the national team totally transparent, so that everybody saw what was going on. There was no criticism, there was no issue. And all of the coaches, most importantly, knew what their players were doing. It was such an important thing to me.
What do you think, again, about or your opinion about the national team training during the league? The league still play, but the player come to the national team during FIFA match day. I think it's only in Indonesia. Even Thailand now, they don't call the player when the league start.
No, it was a really difficult.